Jake Harrison walked into the big meeting room where all the alien leaders sat waiting. His boots made soft sounds on the smooth floor as he moved toward the speaking stand in the center. The room was huge and filled with creatures from many different worlds. Some looked like giant birds with bright feathers. Others were made of crystal that sparkled in the light. A few lived in water tanks and spoke through bubbles. Jake had seen them all before during his 3 years as Earth's main speaker to the Galactic Council. Dr. Lisa Martinez walked beside him carrying a tablet with their final offer written on it. She had worked for weeks writing this proposal with the best minds on Earth. They knew this was their last chance to make the aliens understand that humans wanted to help and be part of their group. Lisa looked calm, but Jake could see worry in her eyes. They both knew what would happen if the council said no again. The council leader was a tall lizard-like creature called Vexthal who sat on a raised platform above everyone else. His green scales caught the light as he turned his head to look down at the two humans. Around him sat representatives from 47 different worlds. Some were small and furry. Others were tall and thin like walking sticks. A few had too many eyes or arms to count. But they all had one thing in common. They thought humans were not important enough to be their equals. Jake reached the speaking stand and put his hands on the smooth surface. He had given many speeches here, but this one felt different. This time he was not asking for special treatment or trying to get something for nothing. He was offering everything Earth could give and asking for almost nothing back. The proposal Lisa held would let humans take the most dangerous jobs protecting the galaxy while other species stayed safe. Humans would guard the scary parts of space where pirates lived and monsters hid. All they wanted was the right to trade fairly with other worlds. The room became quiet as Jake started to speak. His voice was strong and clear without needing any machines to make it louder. He had learned that humans were one of the few species that could talk loud enough for everyone to hear them without help. Most aliens needed special devices to make their voices carry across the big room. Jake explained the human offer step by step. Earth would send its best ships to patrol the outer edges of known space where danger was always close. Human soldiers would fight the creatures that lived in dark nebulas and attacked peaceful traders. Human doctors would help sick aliens even if those aliens came from worlds that had never been nice to Earth. Human teachers would share their knowledge with any species that wanted to learn. In return, humans only wanted to be treated fairly. When they came to alien worlds to buy and sell things, when Jake finished talking, the room stayed quiet for a moment. Then the crystal alien called Zephyr made a sound like breaking glass that the translation machine said meant laughter. The crystal being spoke in musical tones that hurt human ears to hear. The translator turned the sounds into words that made Jake's heart sink. The alien said humans thought too much of themselves. Earth people were not special or useful. Everything humans could do could be done better and cheaper by other species. The crystal being said humans caused too much trouble and should be happy just to be allowed in council space at all. Council leader Vexthal leaned forward and his yellow eyes looked cold as winter ice. He spoke in a voice that sounded like gravel falling down a mountain. The lizard said the human proposal was rejected completely. He said the council was tired of hearing humans ask for things they did not deserve. The council worked perfectly fine without giving humans any real power or respect. Other aliens around the room showed they agreed with their leader. The bird-like creatures preened their feathers and made happy chirping sounds. The water creatures made bubbles that their translators said meant they were pleased. The stick-thin aliens clicked their many joints together and what Jake had learned meant approval. Lisa stepped closer to Jake and nodded once. They had expected this answer. Earth's leaders had told them what to do if the council said no again. Jake gathered his papers and tablet with slow, careful movements. He looked up at Vexthal and spoke in a quiet voice that somehow seemed louder than shouting. Jake said they understood the council's position completely. He thanked them for making their feelings so clear. He said he and Lisa would go back to Earth right away to tell their government what the council had decided. As they walked toward the big doors, no alien called out to stop them. No voice suggested they should try again or change their offer. The metal doors closed behind them with a sound like thunder that seemed to shake the whole building. Neither Jake nor Lisa looked back as they left the council building forever. 3 months passed after the council rejected Earth's final offer, and Captain Ben Carter was sitting in his office on Kepler Station when the message came through. The space station floated at the edge of human territory where it watched over the border between Earth space and Council space. Ben had been stationed there for 2 years helping alien ships that got into trouble and working with alien patrol groups to catch space pirates. The message was short and came directly from Earth Command. Ben read it twice to make sure he understood correctly. Operation Silent Departure, it said. All human workers, soldiers, and diplomats were to leave Council space immediately. They were to pack up everything and come home without explaining why to anyone. The order was clear and simple, but Ben felt confused about what it meant. All around the galaxy, other humans got the same message at the same time. Dr. Amy Roberts was working in her lab on the Zephyrian homeworld trying to find a cure for a disease that was killing the crystal aliens. She had spent 5 years learning how their crystal bodies worked and was close to finding an answer. When she got the message, she stopped her work and started packing her equipment. Her Zephyrian helpers asked why she was leaving, but Amy just said she had new orders from Earth. The crystal aliens did not seem worried that she was going. They thought humans came and went all the time for strange reasons that no one could understand. They did not know that Amy was the only person in the galaxy who knew how to cure their sickness. They thought other doctors could do the same work. Just as well, Paul Kim was Earth's main trade representative who worked with dozens of alien companies, buying and selling goods between human and alien worlds. He got the message while he was in a meeting with fish-like aliens who wanted to buy human food products. Paul stood up in the middle of the meeting and said he had to cancel all current deals and would not be making any new ones. When the aliens asked why, Paul told them Earth was changing its business plans. The aliens did not understand what Paul meant, but they were not too worried. They thought they could find other species to trade with easily. They did not know that humans had been selling them food at prices so low that Earth companies lost money on every deal. Paul had been keeping the trade routes profitable by using Earth's own money to pay for shipping costs. Sam Rodriguez had been helping the bird-like Cathari improve their military tactics for 3 years. He was a smart soldier who understood how different alien species fought and could predict what enemies would do in battle. The Cathari commanders thought they were natural military geniuses because they won every fight they entered. They did not know that Sam had been quietly writing their battle plans and making their strategies work. When Sam got his orders, he submitted his resignation and left within 2 days. The Cathari asked when his replacement would arrive, but no replacement ever came. When they asked Earth Command about sending someone new, they got a polite message saying Earth was restructuring its military advisory programs. What made the human departure strange was how complete it was. Humans did not just leave the big important jobs. They also stopped doing all the small helpful things they had been doing for years. Human engineers stopped fixing broken alien machines during their free time. Human doctors stopped giving free medical advice to alien friends. Human teachers stopped tutoring alien children who were having trouble in school. The humans even stopped sending birthday gifts to alien ambassadors, which had been a tradition for many years. They stopped hosting the weekly social gatherings where different species could meet and talk in a relaxed setting. They stopped organizing the cultural exchange programs that helped young aliens learn about other worlds. Every human in Council space got ready to leave in the same quiet, efficient way. They packed their belongings without complaining or making speeches about being treated unfairly. They did not demand explanations or apologies from the aliens they had been working with. They just smiled politely and said they had new assignments that required them to return home. When aliens asked for more details about why all the humans were leaving at once, the standard answer was always the same. Earth was adjusting its galactic priorities, they were told. This became known among confused alien traders and diplomats as the human phrase, because every human said exactly the same thing. The withdrawal happened so smoothly that many aliens barely noticed it was happening. They assumed humans would be back soon because humans always seemed eager to help and be involved in council affairs. Some aliens thought this was just another strange human custom that they did not understand. Others figured the humans were having some kind of internal political problem that would be solved quickly, but the humans did not come back. Days turned into weeks and weeks turned into months. The last human ship left council space on a Tuesday morning without any fanfare or ceremony. The border stations that had always seen human traffic became quiet and empty. The communication channels that humans had used to coordinate with alien partners went silent. For the first time in 20 years, no human voice was heard in council meetings. No human ship appeared in council space asking for permission to land. No human message arrived offering help with problems or requesting permission to start new projects. The silence was complete, and it was beginning to make some aliens feel nervous even though they could not explain why. 6 months after the last human ship disappeared from council space, the first real problems started showing up. Admiral Zekthar was a fish-like creature who commanded the Molthan Defense Force, and he was having the worst week of his long military career. His people were great fighters in water and could handle any enemy that came at them in the ocean depths of their homeworld. But space was different, and space pirates were very different from the sea monsters. His warriors knew how to fight. The rim sectors had always been dangerous places where pirates hid in asteroid fields and attacked merchant ships, for years human and alien forces had worked together to keep the shipping lanes safe. Human captains knew how to fly through asteroid fields without crashing, and human soldiers understood how pirates thought and where they liked to hide. Now the pirates were getting bolder and more dangerous every week. Zekthar floated in his command tank trying to figure out why his forces were losing so many battles. His warriors were brave and strong, but they kept getting confused when pirates used hit and run tactics in zero-gravity environments. The admiral realized he needed the patrol schedules that showed which areas needed the most protection and when. He asked his aide to find the files, but the answer made his gills flutter with worry. The human officers had maintained all the patrol rotation schedules on their own computers, and they had taken everything with them when they left. There were no backup files and no instructions for how to create new schedules. The humans had been quietly managing the entire patrol system for years, while letting alien commanders think they were in charge. Dr. Vexnara faced a different kind of crisis in the Council's medical center. She was trying to prepare for the next big council meeting where representatives from all 47 species would gather in one place. For years, the meetings had gone smoothly, with no one getting sick from being exposed to alien germs or breathing air. That was wrong for their biology. Now, 3 delegates were already showing signs of strange illnesses that Dr. Vexnara had never seen before. She was trying to figure out what medical procedures were needed to keep different species safe when they were all in the same room together. The protocols were incredibly complex because what was healthy air for one species could be poison for another. Some aliens needed high radiation levels, while others would die from even small amounts of radiation. Dr. Vexnara discovered that all the medical safety procedures had been developed and maintained by human doctors led by Dr. Amy Roberts. The humans had been running detailed tests before every meeting to make sure the air mixture and radiation levels were safe for everyone. They had been monitoring delegate health in real time during meetings and making adjustments when anyone started feeling sick. Without the human medical team, Dr. Vexnara had no idea how to keep 47 different biologies healthy in the same space. She tried to contact other alien medical experts, but none of them had experience dealing with so many different species at once. The humans had been the only ones with that knowledge, and they had taken it with them. The Cathari bird-like aliens were discovering problems of their own. Colonel Kethram was reviewing recent battle reports, trying to understand why his forces had been so successful in recent years. The Cathari had won dozens of battles against pirates and hostile aliens, and their commanders had been very proud of their superior tactical thinking, but when Kethram looked closely at the battle analysis files, he found something disturbing. Every successful strategy had been developed using computer models that carried human signatures in their programming code. The tactical assessments that had made Cathari forces so effective had all been created by human military advisors like Sam Rodriguez. The humans had been creating battle plans and then formatting them to look like they were confirming strategies that Cathari commanders had developed themselves. The bird-like aliens thought they were natural military geniuses, but they had actually been following human advice disguised as their own ideas. Without human input, their recent battles had been disasters. The economic problems were even worse than the military ones. Administrator Kextel was a spider-like creature who managed trade efficiency reports for the council. He was trying to understand why shipping costs had suddenly jumped so high that some colonies could not afford to import basic supplies. When Kextel studied the trade data, he made a shocking discovery. Human trading companies had been operating most of their routes at a loss for years. They charged other species very low prices for shipping goods between worlds while using their own money to cover the real costs. Human traders had been essentially paying aliens for the privilege of providing transportation services. Without human subsidies, the true cost of interstellar shipping was much higher than anyone had realized. Alien shipping companies charged normal business rates that included reasonable profits. Only humans had been willing to lose money on most of their trade deals in order to keep the galactic economy stable and affordable for everyone. The most shocking revelation came when Kextel calculated how much money humans had been losing every year. Earth had been spending billions of credits annually to keep Council space trade routes profitable for other species. They had been doing this quietly without ever mentioning it, or asking for anything in return except basic trading rights. All across Council space, similar discoveries were being made. Alien commanders realized that human advisors had been doing most of their strategic thinking. Alien doctors found that human medical teams had been preventing health crises they did not even know were possible. Alien administrators learned that human bureaucrats had been handling the complex paperwork that kept interstellar government functioning smoothly. The humans had not been participants in Council civilization. They had been running it from behind the scenes while letting everyone else take credit for the successes. Now that they were gone, the true complexity of galactic civilization was becoming apparent, and most alien species had no idea how to handle it on their own. 1 year after the humans disappeared, Council leader Vextho called an emergency meeting that brought together every major delegate from across the galaxy. The great assembly hall that had once buzzed with confident voices now felt heavy with worry and fear. The alien representatives who had been so sure of themselves when they rejected Earth's final proposal now looked tired and desperate. Commander Veltrix was the first to speak, and her report made everyone in the room uncomfortable. She was a warrior from a species that looked like walking suits of armor, and she had never shown fear in any battle. But now her voice shook as she described what was happening in the outer regions of Council space. The security situation had completely collapsed, she told the assembled delegates. Pirate attacks were happening 4 times more often than they had when humans were helping with patrols. Entire colonies had been raided and their populations enslaved or killed. 17 research stations had gone silent, and rescue teams were afraid to go looking for survivors because the areas were too dangerous. Veltrix explained that human forces had been handling 60% of all patrol duties in the most dangerous sectors of space. They had been doing this work at cost without charging the Council extra fees for hazard pay or special equipment. Human captains had been willing to fly into asteroid fields and nebulas where other species were afraid to go. Human soldiers had been fighting the monsters and criminals that lived in the dark spaces between stars. Without human protection, the galaxy had become a much more dangerous place. Trade routes that had been safe for decades were now hunting grounds for pirates. Research expeditions that had operated safely were now being attacked and destroyed. Even military convoys with heavy escorts were being overwhelmed by criminal gangs that had grown bold and well-armed. Dr. Vexnara gave the medical report next, and her news was just as bad. 4 different plague outbreaks were spreading across Council space, and she had no idea how to stop them. 3 of the diseases were completely unknown and seemed to be affecting multiple species at once. The quarantine protocols that had kept different biologies safe when they mixed together had broken down completely. The human medical teams had been providing continuous health monitoring for all council species, she explained. They had been running tests and calculations that prevented cross-species contamination during trade meetings and diplomatic gatherings. They had been tracking disease patterns across 47 different biologies and stopping outbreaks before they could spread. Human doctors had also been developing treatments for diseases that affected alien species even when those diseases could not hurt humans. Dr. Amy Roberts and her team had been working on cures for dozens of alien medical conditions, while also maintaining the complex environmental controls that kept council meetings safe for everyone without human medical expertise. Dr. Vexnara was watching alien populations die from diseases that should have been preventable. She had tried to recreate the human medical protocols, but the calculations were too complex and involved biological knowledge that no other species possessed. Economic Administrator Kextel delivered the worst news of all. The galactic economy was in complete collapse, he announced. Shipping costs had tripled, making it impossible for many worlds to afford basic supplies. Manufacturing had slowed down by 60% because raw materials could not be moved efficiently between worlds. Food distribution to 17 colonies had failed completely, and those populations were facing starvation. Kextel showed the assembled delegates a holographic chart that displayed trade route efficiency over the past 20 years. The pattern was clear and shocking. Human traders had been operating at a massive loss on most of their routes in order to keep shipping affordable for other species. They had been using Earth's own treasury to subsidize the entire galactic economy. The spider-like administrator explained that humans had been charging other species only enough to cover fuel and basic maintenance costs. All the other expenses of interstellar shipping, including crew salaries, equipment replacement, and insurance, had been paid for by the human government. Earth had been essentially giving away free transportation services to every other species. In the galaxy. Cultural liaison Hexlara had perhaps the most disturbing report of all. She had been studying human behavioral files that had been left behind in some government databases. What she found showed that humans had been managing the emotional and psychological dynamics of the entire council. The humans had maintained detailed personality profiles for every species and every individual delegate, she explained. They had adjusted their communication styles, their body language, and even their negotiation tactics to make every alien feel comfortable and respected. They had been careful to present their ideas in ways that allowed other species to feel like they were making important contributions. Hexlara realized that the smooth functioning of council meetings had not been due to natural diplomatic skill among the various species. The humans had been quietly managing conflicts, resolving disagreements, and finding compromises that kept everyone happy. They had been making alien delegates feel smart and important while actually doing most of the work of running the government. When Ambassador Zephyr asked whether anyone had tried to contact the humans and asked them to return, the room fell silent. Council leader Vextel admitted that every message sent to Earth had been politely acknowledged but firmly rejected. The humans were not angry or demanding. They simply said they were focused on other projects and could not spare resources for council affairs. Intelligence Chief Mekvar had been monitoring human activities through long-range sensors, and his report was the most frightening of all. Humans were not sitting quietly in their territory waiting for the council to apologize. They were expanding rapidly into unexplored regions of space and building new infrastructure at an incredible pace. Human shipyards were producing vessels with technology that made council ships look primitive. Human colonies were being established in 3 different galaxies that the council had never even known existed. Human research facilities were developing solutions to problems that council scientists had considered impossible to solve. The humans were not preparing to come back to the council, Mekvar explained. They were building a completely new civilization that had no need for the council at all. Earth had moved on and was creating something bigger and better than anything the galaxy had ever seen. 2 years had passed since the last human left council space, and the emergency assembly that gathered in the Great Hall was much smaller than usual. Many species had been forced to withdraw from galactic affairs entirely to deal with crises on their homeworlds. The delegates who did attend looked desperate and defeated. The proud confidence that had filled this room when they rejected Earth's final proposal was now just a painful memory. Council leader Vexthal stood before the remaining representatives and spoke words that would have been unthinkable just a few years earlier. The galaxy needed to consider formally asking the humans for help, he said. The admission hung in the air like a bad smell that no one wanted to acknowledge, but everyone could detect. Ambassador Zephyr was the first to object, and his crystal form rang with indignation. The Council was supposed to be the most advanced and powerful organization in the galaxy, he argued. They could not lower themselves to beg for assistance from a species they had rightfully rejected as inferior. The crystalline being insisted that asking humans for help would destroy the Council's reputation and authority. Admiral Zekthar floated in his tank and made bubbling sounds that his translator rendered as bitter laughter. He asked Zephyr what reputation they were trying to protect. Half the galaxy now saw the Council as weak and ineffective. 3 different pirate organizations had declared themselves independent nations and were actively conquering former Council territories. Some Council species were openly discussing leaving the alliance entirely. The fish-like admiral pointed out that the species they had called inferior had apparently been keeping them alive without anyone knowing it. Pride was a luxury they could no longer afford when their civilization was collapsing around them. Dr. Vexnara supported the proposal with medical urgency that could not be ignored. She had 17 different disease outbreaks that were killing aliens faster than she could count the dead. Her medical staff was exhausted and dying as they tried unsuccessfully to recreate human medical protocols. 3 entire species were facing extinction from plagues that human doctors could probably cure in a matter of weeks. The debate went on for days. As different factions argued about whether to contact Earth, some delegates insisted that the Council should solve its problems alone, even if it took decades to develop the necessary knowledge and skills. Others pointed out that they might not have decades before their civilizations completely collapsed. The deciding factor came when intelligence. Chief Mekvar presented updated reports on the military situation. The Outer Rim colonies were being overrun by criminal organizations that had grown into well-armed militaries. Council forces were losing every major engagement and retreating toward the core worlds. Some sectors had been completely abandoned, because no Council species was willing to risk their ships in areas where human patrols used to keep the peace. Even worse, several Council species were secretly negotiating surrender agreements with the pirate nations rather than continuing to fight a war they could not win. The alliance that had lasted for centuries was breaking apart as each species looked out for its own survival. When the vote finally came, it passed by a narrow margin, with many delegates abstaining rather than openly supporting what they saw as a humiliating admission of failure. The message to Earth was crafted with unprecedented humility and careful language that acknowledged how badly the Council had misjudged humanity's importance. The formal communication requested dialogue about mutual interests and potential cooperation. It avoided using words like help or assistance and tried to frame the contact as an opportunity for both sides to benefit from renewed relationships. The delegates who wrote the message hoped that humans would read between the lines and understand that the Council was desperately trying to find a way to ask for help without completely destroying their remaining dignity. The response from Earth came back within 24 hours, which surprised everyone. Most Council communications took weeks to get answers, but the humans replied almost immediately. The message was professional, polite, and absolutely devastating in its simplicity. Earth thanked the Council for their interest and said they appreciated the gesture. However, due to current commitments and resource allocation, humanity was unable to engage in external diplomatic initiatives at that time. The message ended with a polite wish for the Council's success in addressing its challenges. Ambassador Hexlara read the response aloud to the assembled delegates, and the silence that followed was deafening. The humans had said no in the same calm professional tone they had used for decades when they were trying to help. There was no anger, no demands for apologies, and no conditions that might be negotiated. Several delegates immediately demanded that another message be sent with better terms or more detailed explanations of what the Council could offer in exchange for human assistance. Admiral Kethrel insisted there had to be something humans wanted that could form the basis for negotiations, but Intelligence Chief Mekvar had been studying human activities more closely, and his updated report crushed any hope of finding leverage for negotiations. Human civilization was expanding at an incredible rate into regions of space that made Council territory look small and insignificant. They were making contact with alien species that the Council had never discovered and forming alliances based on mutual respect rather than hierarchical dominance. Human technology had advanced so far beyond Council capabilities that they were solving problems the Council considered impossible. Human ships could travel faster and farther than anything in Council space. Human colonies were thriving in environments that would kill most Council species. Human scientists were making discoveries that revolutionized entire fields of knowledge. Most importantly, humans were accomplishing all of this while maintaining the same principles of cooperation and service that had characterized their time in Council space. The difference was that now they were working with species that valued their contributions and treated them as equals rather than servants. The truth was becoming clear to everyone in the chamber. Humanity had not withdrawn to make a point or seek better treatment. They had simply moved on to bigger and better opportunities. The Council had become irrelevant to human civilization, and there was nothing left to negotiate. Earth had found partners who appreciated what humans had to offer, and they had no reason to look back at the species that had rejected them. 5 years had passed since humanity quietly departed from Council space, and the Great Assembly Hall stood mostly empty. What had once been a thriving alliance of 47 species had crumbled into scattered groups of struggling worlds. Some species had withdrawn from galactic affairs entirely to focus on their own survival. Others had formed smaller regional alliances that barely functioned. A few had simply disappeared as their civilizations collapsed under the weight of problems they could not solve alone. Council leader Vexthel sat in his private chamber surrounded by historical records that painted a picture he had been too proud to see while it was happening. The old lizard had aged badly in the years since the human departure. His scales had lost their shine and his movements were slow and painful. He spent most of his time reading files that showed exactly what humanity had contributed to galactic civilization. Every human contribution had been carefully documented, not for recognition, but for the efficient operation they brought to everything they touched. Human engineers had designed the life support systems that kept the Council building habitable for 47 different biologies. Human programmers had written the translation software that allowed all the species to communicate with each other. Human administrators had created the scheduling systems that kept thousands of meetings and conferences running smoothly. The humans had built, maintained, and operated the invisible infrastructure that held galactic civilization together. They had done this work quietly and competently without demanding credit or special recognition. When they were dismissed, they had left just as quietly, taking with them not just their services, but the knowledge that those services were essential. Dr. Vexnara had submitted her final medical report before her own species withdrew from the Council. The document told a story that made Vexthel feel sick to his stomach. Human medical intervention had prevented an estimated 4 million deaths annually across Council space. Their departure had resulted in medical system collapse for 31 species. The humans had not been participants in Council medical programs, the report concluded. They had been running those programs while letting alien doctors think they were in charge. Human physicians had been monitoring disease patterns across dozens of different biologies and preventing outbreaks before other species even knew they were at risk. Without human medical expertise, entire populations were dying from diseases that should have been easily treatable. The complex protocols that kept different species safe when they interacted had broken down completely. Cross-species contamination was causing new plagues. That spread faster than anyone could track. The economic data was equally devastating. Administrator Kextel's final analysis showed that human subsidies had kept the galactic economy stable for nearly 20 years. Earth had been paying billions of credits annually to keep shipping costs low and trade routes profitable for other species. The humans had not been traders in the normal sense Kextel had written. They had been the invisible foundation that supported interstellar commerce. Without their financial support, the economic model simply did not function. Shipping costs had risen, so high that many worlds could no longer afford to import basic necessities, but perhaps the most painful revelation came from studying human cultural files that had been left behind in some government databases. The humans had maintained detailed psychological profiles for every species in the Council. These files showed that they had adjusted their behavior and communication style to make each alien feel respected and valued. The humans had made everyone feel important, capable, and valued while quietly handling the tasks that others could not or would not perform. They had been the ultimate public servants on a galactic scale. They had served not because they were forced to, but because they genuinely wanted to help other species succeed and prosper. Every species in the Council had been treated according to their specific needs and cultural sensitivities. Human diplomats had studied alien psychology and customs so they could interact in ways that made their partners comfortable. Human negotiators had structured deals to let alien leaders feel smart and successful while ensuring that everyone benefited fairly. The humans had solved conflicts by finding creative solutions that let all parties feel like winners. They had prevented wars by quietly resolving disputes before they could escalate. They had maintained peace not through threats or force, but through patience, understanding, and genuine care for the welfare of other species. Monitoring stations at the edge of former Council space were detecting signs of human expansion into distant galaxies. Long-range sensors showed human colonies thriving in environments that Council species had never even explored. Reports spoke of human fleets that operated with technology and efficiency that made Council achievements look primitive by comparison. The humans had not stopped building and exploring after leaving the Council. If anything, they had accelerated their development once they were free from the burden of supporting less advanced species. They were making contact with new civilizations, forming alliances based on mutual respect and creating solutions to problems that the Council had considered impossible. Intelligence reports indicated that human space now covered regions larger than the entire former Council territory. Human science had advanced far beyond anything the Council had achieved. Human diplomacy was creating stable, peaceful relationships with dozens of species that the Council had never discovered. Vextel's final log entry was recorded in the empty chamber where 47 species had once gathered to govern the galaxy. His words captured the bitter irony that had destroyed everything he had worked to build. The Council had told humans they contributed nothing that could not be obtained elsewhere, he said. They had been completely wrong. The humans had contributed everything, while the Council had contributed nothing that humanity could not accomplish alone. The difference had become clear only after they left. Humans had needed the Council to feel important and useful. The Council had needed humans to survive and prosper. The great doors of the Council chamber sealed one final time as Vextel prepared to return to his dying homeworld. Somewhere among distant stars, humanity continued its quiet work of building civilization. They were just building it with partners who appreciated their efforts and treated them as equals rather than servants. The galaxy had learned too late the difference between being wanted and being needed. The humans had been both, but only the Council had failed to understand which was more important.